Nikola Tesla once said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And we all know that on some level. We'll say that someone gives us a good vibe or a bad vibe, that our energy is off today, or that we haven't been on the same frequency with our partner lately. Colin Hillstrom has made understanding energy, frequency, and vibration, and the role that they play in affecting a person's consciousness and spiritual growth his life's work. From a young age, Colin was intensely drawn to music, quickly becoming a talented songwriter and multi-instrumentalist. Music is not his only passion, though, as Colin was equally drawn toward the study of human psychology and its relationship with spirituality. Over decades, Colin accumulated a wide range of knowledge, from classical psychologists like Jung to Eastern philosophers like Sri Aurobindo, information he would put into practical use with his consciousness and business coaching clients. Eventually, Colin would find a medium that created an outlet for both of his passions to merge: sound baths. If you never experienced a sound bath, I can only recommend that you seek one out at your earliest convenience. Colin's sound baths generally take place at a yoga studio, so there's enough room for people attending to find their own comfortable spaces to lay down and relax. The lights of the studio are turned down, a few candles are lit, and the space is filled for the next 30 to 40 minutes with some of the most beautiful music you'll ever hear. The music floods through the room as Colin plays from 13 bowls made of quartz, all various sizes and shapes and colors, and each emitting its own frequency or pitch. Every sound bath I've had a chance to attend has led me down different corridors of my own emotional consciousness. And I've always come away from the session with a clarity and resonance that lasts for several days and helps me feel more equipped to handle what life has in store for me. Colin has a deep understanding of what sound offers in the way of healing and the ways that we can use it to improve our emotional, spiritual, and physical selves. I was fortunate enough to have interviewed him, during which he shared many of his practical philosophical insights. Colin's love for music, the joy it brings him, and his gratitude for the healing he's seen at work in both himself and his clients shines right through. So without any further delay, I bring you Colin Hillstrom.
Great. What a great adventure.
Yeah. Awesome.
All right.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate the interview.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to be interviewed by you. And this is really exciting because there's just so much to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important. And I think people want this information. And so.
Well, I know I want to learn more. I mean, I've been blessed to attend some of your sound baths already, and I've gotten so much from it. And I didn't even know what a sound bath was until about a year ago, and I got my own little bowl and had heard about sound baths. But after experiencing a few of yours, I was absolutely blown away by how powerful they were. So what I'd love to learn from you today is how you came to perform them in the first place, and then what you believe it brings to people's lives.
I'd like to start with that question, actually. What do I believe it brings to people's lives? Because I think that's probably the most important question. And then we can talk about the history and all that, right? But what do I believe it brings to people's lives is that I think it brings awakening. I think it brings awakening to a better reality. Because most of us are stuck in a reality that's extremely stressful. It feels suffocating. And we have a lot of new inventions, but the moment we have a new invention or new technology, we also feel how it's limiting us. So, for example, how do you get away from that cell phone? I realized just even like organizing this time together today, like for the last 3 days, constantly, because after this interview, we're having a sound bath, right? So I had to communicate with people. And so the great thing about communicating with people using like a phone is that it's pretty instant, but then also like almost like 24/7, you are communicating with people. So it's a two-edged sword, right? So that means that we're experiencing so much more stress nowadays because we're constantly engaging with people, and so that's great. But my point here is that there's always another level. There's always another level of making life better. It's just like we're aiming towards maybe a degree of satisfaction, fulfillment, or happiness, and we're there, and then suddenly we feel unhappy, dissatisfied again, and so it's because there's always more. And I think as humanity, we've actually only started to scratch the surface of what's possible. So, from that perspective, it's about awakening. A couple of years ago, I read a book that was probably written in the 1950s by Swami Radha, I think is her name. She's the one who started the a beautiful spiritual center outside of the Kootenays. And she actually traveled through India in the 1950s, and she met many of the great sages of the time.
Oh, wow.
And she was describing this meeting that she had with Meher Baba. And apparently Meher Baba at that time had stopped speaking, was just seeing people. And his point was that there's nothing left to teach. It's all about awakening. And so today, I'm a huge follower of the teachings that come from Joe Dispenza, amazing chiropractor, neuroscientist, and he was featured in What the Bleep Do We Know?
Oh, yeah,
great documentary. He was one of the younger presenters. He's a chiropractor, and then he became a neuroscientist. He had a major accident being a triathlete in his early 20s, and he healed his back. And practicing basically neuroplasticity and epigenetics. That was sort of the beginning of how we know nowadays that genetics only plays at the very most a 25% role in who we become. And then also, there's nothing static about the brain. It's completely plastic, That means we have so much untapped potential in us. About 98.5% of our DNA is considered junk DNA. We don't know what it's for. Okay, so let's see what happens when we start to awaken more genetic potential. Most of what's actually inside the head, the brain capacity, we know that we're not using all the neurons. So that's all this dormant, latent stuff, untapped, unused powers and potentials that are in us. So it really is about awakening the next level of evolution, because we're really, in my perspective, we're aiming to level 5. Level 1 was basically, so there's just stuff coming out of matter. Okay, so out of matter comes plant, then comes animal, then comes man, and the next level is Superman. Okay. So we're really on the way to supermanhood. Right? Supermanhood, that means, so it's about consciousness. Okay, and sound helps to awaken consciousness. Somebody told me after a sound bath in Whistler just a couple of nights ago, she said that she had heard that sound is the most complex thing for a brain to process. So that means when you actually listen to complex music, whether it's Beethoven or Pat Metheny, you actually listen to complex musical structures. When you listen to a sound bath that's played with a variety of bowls, your brain listens to a very complex structure. David Suzuki, a famous Canadian scientist, and he's based in Vancouver, Suzuki Foundation. Exactly. Amazing man. Quoting him a few years ago, he said, the human brain now holds the key to our future. So what is our future? Probably is something that is hasn't even started to awaken yet. So it's the next level. I follow quite a bit the teachings of Sri Aurobindo, who was basically credited alongside with Gandhi and Nehru, I think, I forgot his last name, as the 3 men that actually were instrumental for India to gain independence. And Sri Aurobindo is an evolutionary teacher and says the next level is the supramental level, which really is about truth consciousness and truth power. So that's to me what the sound is all about. It's about awakening a dormant, inherent capacity that every single man, woman, and child, and infant and unborn person actually has. So we're looking at each other, and we're looking at 5 or 10% of what we could be. Yeah. Maybe one day we'll be walking on water.
Maybe you're 5 or 10, I'm around 2.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's maybe a long answer to the question.
That's incredible.
What's this for? And I think it's such an important question. What's it for? If I go to a restaurant and order a meal, I can ask the question, well, what's it for? Maybe it's just there to please me, but maybe it's there to actually, for example, a couple of days ago, I was in Whistler, and one of my favorite meals at a place called The Green Mustache is a Khichari. And Khichari is known as an Ayurvedic dish and has amazing healing powers. Yeah. So it was that day, it was really damn. I thought, I actually want something that feels warming and healing. And I knew I had a sound bath to play. I was feeling a little tired. So I thought, so what's the food for? Well, the food is there to warm me, to make me feel comfortable, but also I'm aware of its healing powers. Yeah. Versus going next door to another joint that's like a taco shop, right? Yeah. And say oh, today I want to have fun. Maybe have a little bit of tequila with that too on the side. Yeah. So what's it for? Yeah. Right? Being really clear about purpose and intent.
Yeah, I like that.
It's really important.
The thing that I find so striking about that too is you started that with the emerging technology we have with phones, and we're externally projecting our evolution. We're looking to the next technology, but It sounds like what we have in front of us is a latent technology within ourselves.
Totally.
So we're looking out, and we're getting great things, cars and whatnot. But I know that when I sit and am in one of your sound baths, I feel exactly that. Like I feel like a deep sense of personal power, and not something that I get just walking around, or especially when I'm looking at my cell phone.
And I think that's a really great point there, Taylor. It's like a true, genuine sense of personal power. It can only come from the inside. Of course, we need to use outside equipment, but that should be an aid to something, right? It should be something that serves our purpose, but it should be internally directed. Unfortunately, most people are lazy, and it actually takes a tremendous amount of effort and patience to actually do the work that is necessary to activate internal power. And but there is nothing better than actually feeling that, because you feel fresh, you feel confident, you feel happy. It's an inside job.
Yeah.
Totally is an inside job.
Well, that's interesting too, because the personal power, the idea of going through something like a sound bath where you're present with yourself, and you're listening to how your body's interpreting the sound, and being very present state. It's not always an amazing experience if you think about on an emotional level, because sometimes I know that for me and for other people that I've spoken to that have gone through sound baths, it can sometimes be a roller coaster. You go through really high states of happiness, and then also you get a chance to take a look at maybe other areas of your emotional side that you don't otherwise pay attention to.
Totally.
And but you always leave on the other end of it so grateful for having the experience.
That's such a good point. I'm really glad you bring that up, because it's something that I always address at the beginning of a sound bath. So typically people that are drawn to a sound bath are people that are oriented towards the light. And so when I say, what I mean by that is that people that are genuinely, for the most part, they're kind, they're compassionate, they're generous, they're honest, they're humble. And to some extent, we all have some unresolved fears and angers in us, and that's just normal. But versus another person who's like mostly oriented towards like a me, like a self-centered personality.
Right, yeah.
So like they still shy away from the light, because the light shines attention on the obvious, right? So most people like to hide that which they're uncomfortable with. So most people that come to a sound bath actually are somewhat on the path. And what I mean by that, on the path of self-improvement, like genuine self-empowerment. And so when I didn't come up with the term sound bath. So when I discovered these bowls, I actually was invited to be a guest at a sound bath. That was my first experience, a sound bath. And of course, so the word bath implies purification and cleansing, right? So if there were no impurities, then we wouldn't call it a bath. It would be something to just enjoy and relax in, which is great too, right? Going to the day spa, so to speak. But a bath is there to cleanse things. So it is it is normal that you're in a sound bath and you feel great, and suddenly there's some discomfort, some buttons get pushed. Okay. Now the good thing is that it's almost like the sound begins to break loose some unresolved issues that typically are connected to like fear, anger, those sort of things, and so the sound helps to break it up. So one way to look at this is, and this I'm referring to an area it's called, or a field of study that's called yoga psychology. And so in yoga psychology, basically what you have these, at the very core of the being, you have our soul, or it's also referred as the psychic being. Okay, so you think of this like the core. Okay, around that you have your innermost being, and that's the part that's totally pure love, pure joy, pure peace, like unbroken bliss. Then around that you have the inner layers through which we access neutrality, courage, maybe willingness, hopefulness. So it's like the more positive sides of our personality.
Yeah.
But the outermost layer, that's the ugly stuff, okay? Where we're basically linked or connected to shame, guilt, fear, our addictions, all this sort of things, okay? We all have a little bit of that, but the sound helps to break that up so it creates a passageway to access our inner delights, And so one way to deal with something that gets triggered in a sound bath is just to watch it. And so people that get the best experiences in sound baths are people that already have some meditation experience. Right. Because when you know how to meditate, you know how to actually stare something down and not run away from it. Yeah. Right. And we know that, like, so because this happens to me too, I have days where I feel like I don't want to get outside the house, so to speak. Right. If I just breathe through it, and just know that this stuff is actually totally powerless to take away my good, then it doesn't take long and it crumbles, it dissolves.
Totally. Just to add on to your point there, from my own experience with your sound baths, I remember one in particular going, and exactly the same thing. Had one of those days where I didn't feel like leaving the house, and I showed up with the best of intentions, and it took a long time for me to. I was essentially just listening to great music at that point. I wasn't having the experience that I had in the previous sound baths, but eventually lasts about what 30 minutes or so, somewhere around
like
there.
a total depends on which sound bath you were at. Typically they're like between 20 and 50 minutes, so depending how it's set up.
It was somewhere around 30 minutes, and I remember it was about 28 minutes of me listening to music and then being anxious and not getting what I wanted out of the experience. But I had 2 minutes at the very end where everything just sunk in, and it's exactly as you said. I went in with the intention of having, of just looking at it and like being present with it, trying not to judge it and trying not to. And that 2 minutes, it was only 2 minutes of diving in, but I left having the resonance of that for the next 2 days. So,
wow, that's amazing.
I think that's an important thing for people to consider when they go into one of these sound baths. It's not the goal of being in level 10 Buddhist state for an hour on end. It's being present enough to just sink in when you can and experience for what it is.
Yeah, it's just the fourth agreement from Don Miguel Ruiz. Just always do your best, right?
Yeah.
So if you do your best being in a sound bath and just kind of go with the flow, and then just be okay with whatever the outcome is, and just like, so you basically had in the last 2 minutes of a sound bath, you basically got into a samadhi or something like that, which really echoes what's being taught in the Bhagavad Gita, which, where Krishna says basically like any person can reach enlightenment in the last 10 seconds of their life. It's amazing.
I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, well, I made up the 10 seconds thing, but it's, it doesn't really matter what you've done. It's like any person, and I think it refers to like even the worst criminal person could actually reach enlightenment at any point in their life. And I think that's so amazing, that awareness, because we tend to kind of always beat ourselves up for all the mistakes we've made. Yeah. And so we think we're doomed. Yeah. And we're not.
Yeah. Carrying this story with us.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's
I love that. When I've been in one of your sound baths, you do this great thing at the end where you speak about the energies of the different bowls and the energies of the room, and why you played certain bowls more than others, or in harmony or disharmony, discord, I guess.
Yes, binaural sounds quite a bit actually. So binaural sounds, they're like two notes that are side by side and they create tension. actually really wonderful to create more brain activity, so the whole brain starts to work. Just like when you watch a Hitchcock movie, they use music and sound to kind of increase attention, your alertness, because your mind becomes more alert. So that's like, I can demonstrate that a little later maybe, but these sort of things are not scripted. Like nothing in a sound bath is scripted. The sound bath always happens sort of in response to who's there. I don't know what people need, but there is an energy in the room, and there's an energy that's because of who's there and the place itself, what's going on in the cosmos. For example, we're in the month of July, so we're talking today's July 8th, 2018, and I have a couple of astrologer friends who pointed out at the beginning of the month or towards the end of June, saying that July is going to be a very, very challenging month because of, 10,000 retrogrades and blah, 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 right?
There's 3 eclipses too or something.
Or
like
something
that,
like this, a lot of energy, right? Yeah. And I've noticed the sound baths are really intense. And I've been wondering if somehow the sound kind of counteracts this. Because obviously what's going on in the cosmos and all that affects our brain, our nervous system, what's going on within the cells, right? And it's been a very interesting experience. So a sound bath always responds to what people need. Yeah. And so, yes, at the end of a sound bath, I always like to share like what actually happened from my perspective. I love that about music. I know you're a musician too. And one of the favorite things to me about a record or a CD, which unfortunately we don't really have anymore, is just like reading liner notes, and listen to musicians, like their experience of recording and composing, and wow, it's just so much richness because we learn about the creative process. Now, when I play sound bath, yes, okay, I am creating the sound, but we're actually creating it together. And I don't think people are really so aware of that. And I've never really talked about it because I'm just becoming aware of it right now, how we're actually co-creating the experience, maybe more than we're aware of, even though people don't necessarily play the bowls because they come in, they sit or lie down. But
you do a great job of that at the end of the sound baths, of, as I said, like having a summary of why you played certain bowls and what you felt the energy of the room was. So that's one of my favorite parts is, you go through this whole journey and then at the end, you talk about the bowls and what pitch they are and what they work with and the chords that they make and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Well, it's my passion. I totally, I'm so in love with the bowls and this field of music and sound. And so it's, I just naturally love to share about it. It's like when I'm doing this and even like us talking about it now, I feel like nothing else in the world exists. And it's just really great. It's a beautiful gift to be given in one's life. I really do enjoy sharing information, and I think it's really important to understand. Stephen Covey talks about that in his milestone book, The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. Seek to understand. Like we have to help people to understand something, because when we understand something, then we have more choice and awareness as to what's my best next step. Oh, maybe I want to come to another sound bath. Maybe this was enough. Oh, now I realize why I experienced this or that. So it really, I think, it generates a lot more value.
Yeah, definitely.
It's really important.
And it's not just about, I don't know if it's ironic, but a sound bath really creates a present state awareness. You're very in the moment. But for me, a lot of the lasting effects are the most profound. It's very profound in the moment, but I might have a thought 2 days later or have a circumstance where my decision is affected by how I felt or what my experience was in the sound bath, because I was able to, take stock of whatever it was, my emotions or just the things that I was thinking about at the time. And it's just cool how it cascades into the rest of.
Well, I want to do a little bit of show and tell.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
This book here, actually, by Mr. Emoto, I think actually helps us understand why exactly that's happening.
Okay.
Because sound affects water.
Right.
Okay, like we are at least 70% water. So actually the sound vibration affects the water crystals in your body for several days. Okay, so if you have access to new information, and so we're talking about these bowls. Recently I played a sound bath at a gala dinner for the Yoga Festival and Expo. And it was a dignitary from India as a guest. And he came to me after, he says, wow, that's amazing. He said to me, those bowls must be about 500 hertz to a kilobyte hertz. I thought, wow, this man knows a lot. So just to put this into perspective, okay, hertz is cycles per second. you and I probably have our bodies. We're both relatively healthy people, so we probably our frequency might be somewhere around 75 hertz. I'm guessing perhaps. People that are like absolute genius, like Einstein, okay, they're at about 85 hertz.
Oh wow,
that's their frequency. Okay, when we're down to 25 hertz, we start to die.
Oh, okay.
All right. So when we're actually in a sound bath and we're immersed in sound waves that are above 500 hertz. Rose oil, by the way, the highest frequency of any oils of rose oil is 320 hertz.
Oh wow.
Right. So that puts things into perspective, and that's why you have access to those amazing insights. Because intuitive intelligence is something beyond ordinary intelligence. It's in our energy field, right? So we have body, mind, and emotions, okay? Then we have the higher self, okay? Then we get to the intuitive consciousness, and eventually we get to the supermind. So that's part of our aura, yes. So immersing ourselves in high vibrational frequencies gives us access.
It's like the inverse of what you were speaking about before, the core, and then the field, and then the way out to the superficial exterior, the energetic, you call it the supermind or
supermind. You can call it supermind, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is the inverse of that. It's cascading on the other direction. I guess it's from the sound.
Yes, and according to the Vedics, and of course, the ancient Chinese tradition that we are familiar with through, let's say, Qigong and Tai Chi and Chinese medicine, we know there's a chakra system. Right?
Yeah.
Through the chakra system, that information gets into the physical body. Because we have these 7 chakras, we have 12 primary meridians, acupressure points, and so on. So they're all connected. Okay. In reality, probably there is no inside and no outside, because we know nowadays from quantum field research, it's just nothingness, right? But like, how else can we actually describe something? Because we're in a 3-dimensional reality this way, so there is an up and down, and inside and outside, right? In a way, it's probably all totally intermeshed, But so the sound affects water, okay, and we are at least 70% water. I think the brain is 90% water. It's somewhere. It's in that neighborhood. It might vary from person to person, but so the sound, because it's sound vibration, and we are vibration. We are vibrational beings. So that's how that information that you have access to, or the frequency that you have access to in a sound bath, actually remains in your energy field. And that's one of the reasons why often, when I can, I schedule a series of sound baths. So people that are actually really working towards something. Some people say, "Hey, I'm going to be on a 40-day fast," or 10-day meditation, say like, well, if you come to a sound bath every 2 or 3 or 4 days, you actually build up. It's called entrainment, like brain entrainment. It's the same thing.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
So what we want to do is we want to unlink ourselves from negative thoughts and emotions that are fear and anger based, and we want to entrain positive vibrations that take us into the consciousness of love, joy, peace. So we actually have access to more love and strength and light.
Yeah. I like that.
It really is practical.
Yeah.
It's totally practical. So we need to be grounded and connected at the same time.
I've definitely made better decisions following sound baths.
I'm still working on it, but it's
you have a bunch of books there. I'd love to I've heard of what was his name again?
His name is Masaru Emoto.
Yeah, he was in the same documentary,
What Deep Do We Know?
Yeah.
And so there was another book that he published. It was his research on like vibration on water. Right. Okay, this is a follow-up book, and it actually has like music and images to restore your well-being. So it's just like, even like when you listen to like Bach and Mozart and Beethoven, like certain pieces, like how they actually affect water crystals. Yeah. Okay, so this is great reference material because it helps people to understand, like, why should I bother going to a sound bath? Or, a sound bath is great. What's even better is to sing yourself. Because the most powerful sound healing tool in the world is one's own voice.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's a thing, talking about the bunch of books I have here. So here's a book I reference to virtually at every single sound bath. It's The Tower of Sound by a French sound healer, Fabien Marmont. What's amazing about his book, now this guy, he was a world famous jazz guitar player. And he came to the point in his professional career where he said, well, the only thing I can do better, I can keep trying to play faster. And I said, I want to do something else in my life. So he went to the desert and he asked questions. And what came back was that become a sound healer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So he was curious, like, how does sound affect cells? And he collaborated with one of the universities in Paris. And they did Killian photography on human cells. So they took a blood cell, put it under the microscope, okay, and what's basically what we're seeing here.
Oh, is that what that is?
That's what this is, yeah.
Okay.
So there's lots of photographs in here of what happens to our cells when they receive sound, acoustic sound, that is. And what that is, Taylor, is that the human cell actually, emits and receives light.
Yeah.
So it's called biophotonic. The biophotonic effect. I love talking about it because I think that's so relevant to this evolutionary phase, and to speed things up is to actually enhance our light capacity. So biophotonic activation. So using one's own voice in ways that actually feels pleasant is the most powerful way to receive and emit more light. Yeah, and like Gandhi says, in the midst of darkness, light persists. Right. So one way to dispel darkness, meaning that how to get out of depression, how to get beyond addiction, how to unlink oneself from fear and anger, is like use your own voice. And if you don't want to do that, listen to music you like, or go to concerts, come to sound baths. Great thing about being in Vancouver is lots and lots more people actually playing sound baths, gong baths. Wonderful. Oh, it's amazing. It's like you can find something sound related like any day.
Oh, seriously?
In Vancouver. Yeah,
oh, wow.
It's really good. And lots of really talented people. But anyway, so this book, like lots of photographs here.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And the interesting thing about this is that the note of A, every time the note of A is received by the cell, the human cell emits pink light.
Oh, wow.
So here's an example of the note of A. I don't know if the microphone picks it up or not, but so repeatedly, shown with Killian photography, it's pink light. So pink is a color of love. So it means that one way to enhance our love capacity and to entrain our brain and nervous system to be in the field of love more often, because love is a consciousness.
Yeah.
Love is not a desire. You cannot love somebody one day and next day you hate them. That's actually not real love. That's bullshit.
To
find the note of A on the piano or guitar or somewhere and just to kind of hum in that key.
And just or what?
That's right. Yeah. We hum to a baby. Sound healing is the most ancient form, or at least one of the most ancient forms. So it's like using oils and herbs and so on, but I mean, ever since there's been a human being, there's been a voice. Right. So so using one's own voice is really powerful, and it's cheap.
Yeah,
it's totally cheap.
Yeah. Well, even in meditation, I was really self-conscious about just even by myself. It's funny, I'm the only one in the room, and still, I'm self-conscious. But I remember when I first started humming in meditation, so doing deep diaphragmatic breathing, and then as I exhaled, humming, it felt very good. And it was exactly what, as you said, the vibration of humming was so meditative. It was incredible, and I do it to this day every morning now. Yeah, I would love to know. So you mentioned earlier you went to your first sound bath. So
yes.
However.
So that was very interesting. I'm just going to put this book back here. I was living in Banff. For those who don't know where Banff is in the Canadian Rockies. It's almost like on the border of Alberta and British Columbia. Absolutely beautiful place. And I'd heard there was a crystal bowl singing store, sort of. I wasn't really too interested. I've used recordings that included or that were made with singing bowls since about the mid-1990s, and I thought it was okay, but I was never actually a real fan of the regular type of quartz crystal singing bowls. So I didn't pay too much attention to the store that just opened. One day, I just by fluke ended up in that store, and I saw these beautiful bowls with all the different colors, and it was just my inner being became completely awake. And I remember that was a Wednesday. It was a Wednesday sometime in May or June of 2015. And the person said, hey, why don't you come on Friday? So 2 days later, we have a sound bath. So I went to every single sound bath until I found myself working in that store.
Amazing.
And I wasn't looking for a job because I had a full-time career as a consciousness coach, and I kept going to these sound baths.
Yeah.
And one Friday evening, they said, well, the co-founder of the company that makes these bowls, they're based in Salt Lake City, is making a rare tour through Canada, and he'll be playing a sound bath next Tuesday. So I go to that sound bath, and then I hear that the following day he was going to do a workshop on sound. I said, I'd love to go that. And he said, well, it's only for staff. That's how I thought, I got to be there. So I started to talk to them. I said, you probably need some help somehow. Okay, I want to work with you guys because I got to be at the sound bath. And they said, you know what, come tomorrow, we'll find something for you to do. And I said, I wasn't looking for a job. So they said, well, we're in Banff and it's tourist season starting, so we'd like to be open in the evenings. Can you be in the store in the 5 nights of the week? I said, sure. Well, within 2 weeks, I started to play the sound baths. And I had,
you were playing for the people that are coming in.
That's right.
Amazing.
Within 2 weeks, yeah. Music has been the number one love in my life ever since I remember.
Well, you're an amazing pianist.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this song I wrote, actually.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I wrote it on guitar, actually, and then I started playing on piano. Yeah.
Before I leave, can you play it
Definitely.
Awesome.
Yeah. No, thank you very much. Yeah. And I didn't think that I needed to have my own bowls because I had access to 200 bowls to play from, but that's not how it works. These little bowls here, they are totally conscious. And if they're meant to be in your life, life will find a way to put them into your hands. They're also really quite expensive. And I had moved from Vancouver to Banff in 2009, and I thought I would never come to Vancouver again. I really felt finished, even though I loved Vancouver. But so ended up with 12 bowls, and they said, we want to be in Vancouver. You got to go to Vancouver, play sound baths, and you have to sow the seeds. You have to teach others how to play the bowls, so they do somewhat similar to what you do. And then you can go and leave again. So my partner Mara and I, we moved from Banff to Vancouver in November of 2015. And I've been building the sound bath ever since then. And that's how I met lovely people like you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's changed my life and changed many of my friends' lives for the better. It's an incredible experience. Yeah. I find it so interesting that you have 13 bowls now.
13 bowls now, yes.
And you mentioned before we started recording, and you'll be playing it in a moment, that you have 13 bowls to play from, and you choose some when you do play. But you mentioned that you can hear notes as you're playing sometimes that you wish that you could pull into. Could you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yes. Well, I have quite a musical brain. I've been playing music, singing music. I remember I was 3 or 4 years old, and I was running up and down the streets with a little accordion, and I was just singing songs, And whenever there was live music somewhere, it was just like a magnet, boom, pulling me towards that. And I started to take piano lessons when I was 7. I just have a musical ear. And so I put the set together to have an optimal therapeutic effect, but for it also to be a musically beautiful experience. So you can actually play songs, you can play melodies. So in a way, it becomes both a sound healing experience, a sound bath, but also becomes a concert. So there are certain kind of, say, musical themes that, if you come to a few sound baths, you say, oh, he kind of played something like that before. It's just like we all have a signature. Whether you listen to Sting or Paul McCartney or Mozart, there are similarities in our songs, right? I think everybody has sort of a certain creative signature. Not that I want to compare myself to these people, but I think it's true for most of us. We have a certain creative potential and a certain signature sound. So that happens in my sound baths too. So it becomes like a jazz musician, sort of an impromptu sort of composition. And I was like, oh my God, I wish I had that note, because I hear it in my head, but I don't have it on the table.
But isn't it, I found it interesting when you said that, because you talk about Paul McCartney and Sting, and you think about painters or sculptors or any type of creative personality, and they have their signature. They have something that you know when you hear it and when you see it that it's them. But maybe that's just because it's the most authentic representation of who they are, right? Like you get to know their artistic givings in the world by what it sounds like or what it looks like, and that is the most authentic version of who they are. Like yes. It feels like you're giving yourself over to the music, to the performance when we're going through it. So
it's the most beautiful experience of being in the now. And I think you kind of talked about being in the now at the beginning of our conversation, and it's like. So professionally, in my professional experience, when I'm in a coaching session, I work mostly over the telephone with a client. So it's either when I'm in a coaching session or when I'm playing a sound bath. nothing else exists in the world than what's happening in that very moment. And it feels like there's a download happening, you know. And I think when we are truly in the moment, we're vertically integrated. Means that we're completely aligned with higher consciousness, and we become an instrument for the divinity. And I think that's how great music's getting written, how beautiful art is created, how amazing technologies are invented. You know, it's like all happens because of alignment. And so that's another A word, right? We talked about awakening at the beginning. What's important is awakening, because awakening actually leads towards a better and better alignment. And when we achieve perfect alignment in our life, then we basically have perfect love, we have perfect peace, perfect happiness. We can fall out of it, but we can get back into it. And it's just like learning how to walk on a high beam. You know, it's just like the more frequently that we have the experience, you know, the longer we can actually then eventually sustain it until we don't fall off anymore.
It's like the guy who, or the girl who finds enlightenment 10 seconds before death.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I love it. Well, we're going to be going through a sound bath performance very soon. I would love to get maybe some of your final thoughts or anything that you would like other people to know and about yourself and the music, or where they can find you, would be fantastic.
Oh, thank you, Taylor. Best place to check me out if you want more information is just go to my website. Yeah. It's colinhillstrom.com.
Yeah.
There's an event page, you know, for checking out events. And I do share some information on consciousness and sound. And as we talked about, it's important to share information and energy. And that would be the place to go, colinhillstrom.com.
Awesome. Yeah. And it's been an incredible blessing to my life. I've learned a lot from both just the sound, but also you do a lot of great, you have a lot of great conversations about the whole process of what it does for you. So I implore everybody to go check it out if they have a chance to check it out.
Thank you so much, Taylor, for the opportunity to share the information. And it's been a real pleasure talking with you.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Thanks so much for joining me and taking the time to hear the information that Colin has to share. If you're in the Vancouver area, be sure to check out Colin's website and Facebook page for all of his upcoming events. My experience with sound baths has brought me incredible growth and insight into my own life. So I hope that you check one out and you find the same. If you got something out of this interview, or if you know someone who would, I'd be grateful if you shared it with your friends on your social media. If you have any questions or insights of your own, I'd be grateful if you left them in the comments section for this interview. We're all on our own path to becoming the best, most authentic versions of ourselves. Just remember that the secret to that success is getting started. So find out what small thing you can do today and go get started.